And so thank you all for coming out in this really lousy weather, but that's part of development work anyway. My name is Philip Oxford. I'm a professor of political science and the director of the Institute for the Study of International Development. And the Institute, along with the major in international management from the Des Hotels Faculty of Management, are very pleased to be able to sponsor today's McDonald-Currie lecture. We are really fortunate to have a great person speaking. You'll see that I'm obviously right when I say she's a great person. Just going through her CV in 1986, driven by a vision to launch and develop another cutting-edge fashion brand in Canada, Joelle and her future husband, Louis Adler, secured Canadian exclusivity for the Italian-based Diesel fashion label. Today, as president and CEO of Diesel Canada, Joey's keen understanding of the Canadian marketplace and her entrepreneurial savvy have helped grow the brand into one of the most recognizable and sought-after fashion labels in the country. And when you apply that entrepreneurial spirit to something that's more social, more development-oriented, what do you get? Well, you get exactly what Joey's done. Always passionate about service to the community, Joey also founded in 2005 the One by One Foundation in memory of her late husband Lou, who had passed away after a long illness. One by One's philosophy is that every life is precious and that individuals can make profound differences in the lives of others one by one. One by One's mission is to improve the lives of children in Canada, the U.S., and around the world with programs dedicated to the fundamental pillars: food, nutrition, health, water, education, and play. And if you take that into account, it's not surprising that she's won all kinds of great awards. She was the first recipient of the Laurier Norman Star Humanitarian Award. She also won the Queen's Jubilee Medal in 2012. In 2011, she was selected to the prestigious Canada's Most Powerful Women Top 100. She was More Magazine's Most Compelling Woman Over 40 and Woman Post's Top 20 Women in 2010, and on and on and on. And so rather than make her blush and bore you, I think I'll hand over the floor. So thank you very much.
Oh, hi everybody. Bonjour tout le monde. Do we have francophones in the audience? Okay. First of all, I think what I'd like to do is to take a moment to remember our man in service yesterday in Ottawa, and to remember that we live in the greatest country in the planet, and I think Quebec's the greatest province in the land, so all's good. So I think we'd like to acknowledge the loss of that fine young man. Alors, je vous remercie infiniment d'être là. On va faire ça en anglais parce que je pense que la majorité d'entre vous est en anglais. Mais pour ceux d'entre vous qui aimeraient poser des questions en français après, vous êtes les bienvenus. So first of all, I just want to thank Professor Oxford for having me. I want to thank the Faculty of Management at McGill and the Institute for the Study of International Development, of which I think you should all be very proud to have in your school. It's an amazing, amazing institute, and really at the cutting edge of where the world is going. And of course, I want to thank McDonald-Currie for sponsoring this and for creating a yearly event. And I just want to thank all of you again for being here. So I'm going to take a few minutes to speak, and then I'm going to open to questions, because for me it's much more important to have an interactive discussion than for me to bore you for any extended length of time. So the first thing I think you should know is my story, and I'll give it to you in a 5-second capsule. And for those of you that know it, I'm sorry, I'm going to repeat it. So here it is. In 2001, my husband got very gravely ill. And we'd always been, and I want to distinguish this conversation between philanthropy and social enterprise. And I want to explain from my point of view the great difference. So in 2001, my husband got very gravely ill with a catastrophic illness, and we spent many months in the hospital. And it was September 11th, actually, 2001, when I got really bad news. And I don't want to get into the emotionality of it, but suffice it to say that during that period, I realized that there wasn't a whole lot of value for a single human life in this planet. That every day we made decisions, economically on whose lives we should save and whose lives we shouldn't save. And I promised myself during that journey that I would spend the rest of my life promoting the value of one life. And it's an interesting thing. I mean, a lot of it comes from my culture and my religious beliefs, but at the same time, one of the things that's always struck me, and I think it's very prevalent in places like Africa, I'm very privileged to sit on the board of Partners in Health, and when the AIDS epidemic hit, Paul Farmer, who's my hero, said that he could treat AIDS and communicable diseases in the developing world, and the World Health Organization said you can't, and he proved that you could. And why do I bring that up? Because down the road in this discussion, I'll explain to you why it's so important to consider the value of every single life in everything that we do. It's not only a philosophy from a humanitarian standpoint, it's a philosophy from your own standpoint. And why do I say that? Because if you value a single human life, in everything that you do, in every relationship that you have, you will be present in the moment with that person across from you. So that we can talk about later, because that's not really why we're here. So my husband passed away in 2003, and I decided that what I really wanted to do was to go explore what was going on in Africa. And so I took my first trip to Africa in 2006, and like all serial entrepreneurs, because that's what I am, I'm a serial entrepreneur, I was getting frustrated. I would go, and I would see all these things happening, and I would apply my business brain to it, and I would really frustrate the people that were on the ground, and they would frustrate me. And why is that? Because we were talking two different languages. Philanthropy is not a bad thing. It's simply not sustainable. Philanthropy is taking care of an immediate problem today. It's saving a life today. And it is absolutely necessary, and it is not something that we can just disregard. But I felt there was another way. I really felt that the only way to make sustainable change was to look for business opportunities. And so I came up with an idea, and the idea had to do with my industry. My industry is the fashion industry. So recently I spoke at the United Nations to 150 of the leading brands in the world, who are all under the United Nations. The UN had brought us all around because they wanted to know what we were doing in our business. Does anybody know anything about the fashion business in this audience? Does anybody care about the fashion business? Oh, the ladies? Any men? Come on. Ah, one. Okay. So here's the way I started. I was being interviewed by one of the writers of The Economist, and I said, I am a capitalist pig. Anybody here from the School of Management? Because I don't want to be overrun. Okay, good. Thank the good Lord. Okay. I am a, emergency exit. I'm a capitalist pig. And what is a capitalist pig? It's someone who wants to make a whole lot of money. Okay? Many of you will say, well, that's a terrible thing. But I want to make a whole lot of money because I want to reinvest it in other people and help other people. So that makes me a capitalist with a heart, which is okay. So it's like, capitalist bad, capitalist with a heart good. Can we all say that? Capitalist bad, capitalist with a heart good. So don't always qualify every capitalist as a bad person. The manufacturing industry of clothing is a $650 billion industry at FOB. It has little regulation. It has 150,000 factories, and I would assume it employs close to 100 million people. And if we put 5% back and reinvested it from where we derive benefit, we would change the world in 24 hours. Because that would be $30 billion into the hands of the most needy, most worthy people on the planet. So why am I explaining this to you? Because I believe there's two paths in the world right now. One is philanthropy, which takes care of immediate needs, especially in emergency. And then there's what I call social entrepreneurship. What is an entrepreneur? I would like somebody here to give me a definition. Who wants to give me a definition of entrepreneurship? The people in the management school, I would hope there would be one of you who could, please. Oh, come on. Come on, one. Are you shy or you don't know? Who's shy and that knows but shy? You can whisper it to someone else who's not shy. My explanation of entrepreneurship is someone who's willing to take great risk on an idea. An entrepreneur is someone who will have a vision and implement that vision at all costs and will go like Captain Kirk where no man has gone before. That's a developing world. There are huge opportunities for every single one of you to make a profound change in the world. But it cannot be done sustainably unless we are prepared to create jobs and opportunities for the people of the developing world. Handouts are not dignified. I always like to use the example of, can you imagine for 1 second what it is like for a parent, a father, or a mother to go out and to put their hands out because they can't feed their own children or they cannot send their children to school. And we've been doing this for 60 years. We've been going into the developing world and we've been handing out food and medical and all of those things. And it's not that we've done badly. We've done very good things. But I don't believe that that is the way for future change. And that's why I really appreciate what you're doing here, Professor, because the real way is how do you create sustainable development? That's bringing all you entrepreneurs and those with great ideas to the developing world to change things in a sustainable way. So I want to tell you the story of my first project was in Rwanda. I landed in Rwanda in 2006, and I was in a village, and there were 15 women who wanted to start a basket weaving co-op. Does anybody know anything about basket weaving? It's actually an amazing opportunity, and a lot of artisanship in the developing world is a great opportunity for everyone. So there was 15 of them, and they were very rudimentary, and I decided to give them their first order. I ordered 300 baskets, and why? Because we were having our event in Toronto for One by One, and we would always buy gifts for the people that had bought tables. And I said, why should we buy gifts at home? Here's an opportunity to create a gift with the people that are there and have them send them over on it. This was June and our event was September. You cannot imagine the pride that these ladies took. You cannot imagine the workmanship that they wanted to get to. They would keep sending me samples every couple of weeks until they felt that they had reached the level of what they call master craftsmanship. We gave them an order of $5,500. 2 years ago, when I was there, the co-op had grown to 500 women. They were major suppliers to Bloomingdale's and Macy's. And when I started to speak to the original 15 women as to what they had done with the money that they were making, the stories ranged from, I bought my son a bike to go to school. I bought my parents a house. I bought a goat so that I could get milk that I could sell and create her. Somehow, we forget how incredibly passionate, innovative, and self-reliant humans can be if they're just given one leg up. When I was in Rwanda in 2006, there was a factory that was owned by the government. It was a clothing factory. And the government of Rwanda said to me, we want to give it to you. Just please get it going. And I looked at all the logistics. Rwanda's a landlocked country. It's hard to get back and forth anywhere. The cost of air freight was expensive, getting the fabric in, getting the fabric out, almost impossible. But as I sat in that factory, I said to myself, what is the biggest and most important hiring industry of the developing world? First and foremost, it is the fashion industry. Did anybody know that, by the way? No. When I was a kid, we were raising money for Bangladesh. And we used to walk, and Bangladesh today, of course, still has tremendous poverty, but has really risen to what my friend Jeffrey Sachs calls the first rung up the economic ladder. Has anybody read Dr. Sachs's book, The End of Poverty? Yeah. Did you get past the 3 chapters? Because if you did, I'm giving you a medal. Did you? Oh my God, what's your name? What? Maddie. Maddie got past the first 3 chapters. Well done. I didn't. So basically the idea of my industry is that nobody wants to talk about it because everybody's afraid that if we upset the apple cart, we're going to ruin the potential of 100 million jobs. But at the same time, if my industry was controlled and overseen like the oil industry is, as an example, we would probably be in very serious trouble. So I said to myself, why can't we, as entrepreneurs, come into the developing world, but put back responsibly and equitably from where we derive great benefit? Because what have we done in the developing world? It's called the race to the bottom. What is the race to the bottom? The cheapest labor. So when we started out in Hong Kong, that was the cheapest labor. When we couldn't work in Hong Kong anymore, when their economy grew, we went to places like Taiwan and China and Vietnam and Korea and Bangladesh. And we just keep running after the cheapest labor. This is what my industry does. Is it fair? I don't think it's an issue of fair. One of the things I also want to impart on you is changing things with love, not negativity. Because when you try to change things with negativity, you very rarely succeed. So I looked at my industry and I said, I want to be the agent of change. And what would happen if I opened a factory, state-of-the-art, LEED certified, where people had better working conditions? I keep the wages the same to not upset the apple cart, but I would share my profits back with the workers in the community. I started talking about this idea in June of 2006. Do you know when I finally got it opened? October of 2013. No, 14? Yeah, 2013. Why? I don't know. I think part of it was because I was a woman, or am a woman, and international culturally was difficult. Part of it was because the industry doesn't really want to change. I believe that you have to leverage what you do every day for good. The world will change when every day, whatever you do, you leverage for good. So no matter what business you're in, no matter what you do, I'll give you my perfect example of that, or a taxi company. Imagine if a taxi company every single day would take one car and give it 1 hour, every car would give 1 hour a day to help someone in the community, whether it be to pick up an elderly person, to take them to the doctor or do their groceries. It wouldn't cost them anything. That's what I mean by leveraging for good. The other story that I want to impart on you about leveraging for good was my foundation feeds 5,500 children in the Aboriginal communities of Canada. And the most difficult thing that we had in the Aboriginal communities was getting to the Aboriginal communities, especially in the winter. And so Pepsi came, and this is not about the developing world, although I think in a lot of ways we could call our communities in the Aboriginal communities the developing world in many. Am I off base with that, Professor? No. I could tell you that having landed in Pectawagan, Alberta, 900 kilometers north of Winnipeg, 3 days after I came back from Africa, and I thought that Ethiopia was nicer than that community, I think tells you a little bit about our situation in the First Nations. But in any case, I said, Pepsi wanted to come on board with my foundation and they wanted to give me money. And I said to the president at the time, I don't want the money. He looked at me like I had lost my marbles. I said, I want your Quaker Oats, your Dole juices, and I need your bottlers to deliver the food to the most remote areas. Because no matter how remote a place is, Pepsi gets delivered. It's true, by the way. And it's cheaper to give a child a Pepsi and a bag of chips than it does. I'm sorry, I thought I turned my phone off. Tell Frank I'll call him later. Sorry. I apologize. Jeez. That's embarrassing, eh? Did I get demerit points? Is there something I get a bad grade? Okay. That was Frank Sinatra for all you that were born before 1990 here? Less, right? Yeah. We're getting old. Anyway, my point of it is, again, the story of leveraging for good. Go to Pepsi, say, don't want your money. Give me the food that's going to be wholesome for the kids and help me deliver it. Today we have 3 partners in the breakfast program. Sodexo, Pepsi, and then we just signed De Beers. De Beers, the diamond mine, because we have a community in northern Quebec, and we couldn't get the food there. But you know who gets all sorts of stuff there for their workers? De Beers. Not the Bears, De Beers. Saturday Night Live fan. You're outed. Okay. Guys, I like to make light of certain things, but I just want to say one thing. I've traveled all over the world. I've traveled to the Sudan. I've traveled to Rwanda. I've traveled to Kenya. I've traveled to Ethiopia. I've spent a lot of time in Haiti, and we can talk about that. There is a sense of hope. There is a sense of opportunity. Today, in this country, and in the United States and most Western developed countries, the economic growth will be very, very small for the next many, many years. We just don't have the ability to run it faster than 1 or 2%, and we're going to be very happy with that. Rwanda grew 8% last year. Haiti grew 6 or 7%. The opportunities are so vast to go, be entrepreneurs, put people to work with the sole idea of putting back in a way that is equitable to what we derive such great benefit from. And so I don't know any other way. My model is, and let me tell you something, it is not easy. When we look at the factory issue, it taking 7 years to open a factory with an idea that is so beneficial to everyone. It's not for everyone. How many people are here tonight? Maybe 300 and some odd? 400? I'm sorry? Yeah. So 400. 10% of you are going to be billionaires. If you go somewhere else out of here. And it's not about the money per se. Money is not the measure of success. The measure of success is if you're happy with yourself in what you do every single day. And I can tell you that there's nothing that's going to make you happier than helping another fellow human being. Because helping a fellow human being is not an obligation. It's a privilege. And the other thing I want you to learn very quickly is the art of collaboration. My generation, the baby boomers, we're not very good at that. Because we were raised in this concept of he who has the most toys when he dies wins. So we were raised in this competitive nature our parents were parents of the Great Depression, of World War II. And so the fear of not having, the fear of being less, drove their children, like me, to fight to win at all costs. And so the baby boomers have kind of screwed up the world a little bit for you, but at the same time, they've done a lot of good. Take what we've done well and ignore all the stuff we've done poorly. When you walk into our factory in Haiti, there's a rubber flooring on the cement. Why is that? So people don't stand on cement all day. There's special lighting, which is state-of-the-art, which we flew in from Miami, so people don't have to sit in harsh lighting every day. There's a doctor at all times for our workers and their families. Every line of production is responsible for a garment from beginning to end. So there's no manager on the floor. There's a sense of responsibility, a sense of dignity, a sense of pride. Every operator can do every single component of the garment. So if someone wants to get up and go to the bathroom, someone can go from one place and take over theirs easily. We're just at the tip. I mean, we are losing so much money. We keep putting money back, but it's okay. Because I am committed to making this an example. I know that I may not be alive when the whole world operates like this. And this is what innovators sometimes have to face. You have an idea, you try it, it's like beating your head up against the wall, and eventually it happens, because you know what? In this world, no matter how much bad there is, good always does prevail. It takes time, but I promise you, good does prevail, and doing the right thing does prevail. Anybody want to volunteer or do internships? I encourage you to do that, guys. I encourage you to go to the developing world, take your passion, your ideas, your innovation, and go see what it's all about. It's about collaborating. It's about putting people to work. It's about treating people with dignity. It's about connecting one-on-one. And it's about always doing right. There's no doubt in my mind that we will change the world only one way: when things are sustainable. When things can perpetuate themselves without constant interjection of outside world. And let me tell you something. I've been in Haiti now since 2005. Haiti's our big, and one of the things I had to learn as this, entrepreneur was, take it easy. Learn to fit within the culture. Even in our School of Management, we learn about going to do business in another place and taking into consideration the culture and respecting the culture. Same thing. If you learn to treat people with dignity, things will work themselves out. So just to recap, because I would love to take some questions. 1, philanthropy. Changing the world is a 2-lane highway. Philanthropy on this side, people do it really well. UNICEF, big organizations. Partners in Health, for the health piece. We will always need it. We'll need it in times of disaster. We'll need it in healthcare. That's pretty much all we'll ever need it in. Then on this side of this line are all of you who are passionate about making a difference in the world. Setting up enterprises, microfinancing, micro-enterprises, small, big, medium, it doesn't matter what. Putting the millions and millions of people. It'll happen when my industry wakes up and says, we can't do this anymore and we have to push down the line, The brands have to go down the line to the factory and say, this is what we want you to look like, and this is how we want you to treat people, and this is how we want the money to be reinvested into the community. This is new, relatively new, I would say, social enterprise, Professor, but I'm telling you. And by the way, it's not just for the developing world. It applies to here as well. Every single day, we have to wake up and think, what can I do to make the world a better place? And if it means getting on an elevator and smiling and talking to the person in the elevator. The other day I made a post on Twitter, and I just said that fear is our greatest paralyzer. Fear will paralyze you, as it has paralyzed me, from moving forward and doing what I want or what you want. Acknowledge the fear. Acknowledge it. Know that it's there. And do not let it overwhelm you. And I posted that in 44, something like that in 40, and I got a retweet from someone who said, thank you so much. I was just about at the end of my rope. And I tweeted back and I said, I know how you feel, because I've been there. I've been there. I've known what it is to have such fear that I was paralyzed from it. And it'll happen throughout your life. So be brave. Acknowledge that things are scary. The world is a scary place. But fundamentally, I believe that the world is a good place. That there's many more good people than there are not so good people. And just learn to trust each other, collaborate with each other. I always say, passion, entrepreneurship is based on opening up your heart and taking risk. When you open up your heart and you take risk, you're going to meet 10 people. 2 of them are probably not going to be the right fit for you. But if you don't do that, you miss out on the 8. So I encourage all of you, you are the future of the world. And I don't say it lightly, by the way. The professor will know, and my friend here will tell you, I do this all the time. You ask me to speak, it could be to 10 young people, it could be to 200, it could be to 500 young people. I will do it. Why? Because I want you all to know that you are the future of this world. Everything you will do from this day forward will be that one little drop of water that'll make the world a better place or not. And how you choose to conduct yourself and how you choose to make an impact on the people around you has so much energy and power that you cannot imagine. And I'm not going to get metaphysical on you, but I've lived this. I know. I speak from experience. Smile. Care for each other. Don't look at what someone looks like. Listen to their heart and who they are. And you will change the world. You will change it. I promise. Anybody want to take the challenge with me? Who wants to take the Change the World challenge? Come on. Okay. That's a little hesitant. I will take questions right now. Anybody? Walk up to the microphone. There's a microphone over there and over there.
You said you spoke at the UN to other fashion brands. Are there other brands that are taking like the same path as you, or it's still really like experimental?
Actually, it's very interesting because the UN finally got this, what they call ethical manufacturing group going. And so there's people like Stella McCartney, and they're actually coming to the factory next Monday, the 3rd, which I'm excited about. Stella McCartney, Vivienne Westwood, and what they're doing now is they've actually started fabric production in Burkina Faso and Liberia. And, so they're looking at taking fabric, sending it over to Haiti, and making it there. So we're excited about that, yes. I mean, the problem is, who's a marketer here? Anybody? Okay, so in marketing, one of the reasons that we have a problem with the fashion brands is they say, we have $100 million worth of production. You can't do our production. You can only do, you know, $1 million of our production. If we promote that, we make our 999 million look bad, or 99 million look bad. And what I'm saying is own it. We can't change the world. The problem is everyone is black and white. It's not black and white. It's 50 shades of gray. No, it really is gray. You have to get to somewhere one step at a time. You cannot change the world overnight. So every little thing that you do is one better thing that you didn't do before. And this is what we're trying to get the brands to understand. They can't change their production and their supply chain overnight. But hopefully some of them are starting to understand. But that's the answer to that. Anyone else? Oh, there's a lady in pink.
Hi, my name is Krista. First of all, thank you so much. Really inspiring talk.
Thank you.
I am from Benin Republic in West Africa, and I'd like to work all over the African continent in some sort of social entrepreneurship. I'm not too sure exactly what, and I'm questioning what types of industries I should go into it. But when I look at a lot of the industries that are on the continent, there's a whole lot of exploitation. So I have a kind of ethical boundary that makes me not want to work in mining, for example, or even, for example, I'm in a gender and development class, and we started our class looking at Bangladesh and looking at how factories have burnt down and how no one's really paying attention to it and how there's so much corruption. And although I feel like I can't work in this industry, we can't be hypocrites, because when you look at yourself, you look at what are you wearing, how is this made? We know how it's made, we still purchase it, but then I'm in a situation where when it comes to actually going into my working life, I feel like, is it wrong? How do I bypass it, but still I'm able to enter and start my own business and be successful?
Well, first of all, I think it's amazing that you have these thoughts, because it tells me that you're a very human person with integrity. So you grapple with what's right and what's wrong. That makes you already A-okay in my book. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. As far as what industry to go into, I think you have to see what impact you can make and maximize the impact that you can do. It's like if, I went from a basket weaving co-op to investing millions in a factory. I didn't do it overnight. I got to that point, and one of the things that I think is really important is to understand where you are, where you want to operate, for lack of a better word, your business and really educate yourself. See what's going on around you, what has been tried before, what's going on in another country maybe. Let's say you wanted to work in your homeland of Benin, right? Well, you can go next door. I mean, you've got Burkina Faso, you've got Liberia, you've got Liberia, you've got plenty of places that you can go and say, okay, what's going on, what interests me? One of the things you have to do is do something that you're passionate about. That, I say, I don't care what you're going to do the rest of your life. You better like it, because when you get up in the morning and go to work and you like what you do, you never work a day in your life. So find what you're good at. Also be patient. Again, it's like the mining industry. Is it bad? Yes, mining has a tremendously big problem, but when you think about, the Congo and Rwanda, the kind of mining that's been there. Now, it's been exploitive, right? That's a big industry. Maybe you don't want to take that on. But there's so many things to do. My friends opened restaurants in Rwanda, I mean, it's amazing. Everything is ready banking, microfinancing, restaurants, daycare centers. I mean, imagine a blank canvas with the fastest growing economy in the world. Why would you all not want to be there? I know that if I were your age, I'd be running there in a flash. But the difference, the beauty about what you want is you feel it. You want to do something from a place and you want it to have integrity. And so I think that's marvelous. And you will find it. And if you want, I'll give you my email after and I'll let you know certain things that I know. And if you want to explore them, I'm happy to help you.
Thank you.
Good for you, Krista. It's nice to meet you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name's Delane.
Elaine?
Delane.
Oh, Dilling.
And again, I wanted to thank you for coming, especially since I'm a fifth-year International Development Studies student.
Oh, good for you.
With a
Is that a
great-
bad thing, 5 years, or a good thing?
I don't see it as a bad thing. Other people may disagree.
I'm just bugging you.
But I have been working in the fashion industry for about 4 years.
Ooh.
And I recently just completely severed all ties with the fashion industry. I worked at Ogilvy's, and I found that it was hard to balance between the two identities that I have as an IDS student who's very passionate about development, working in that industry, especially luxury retail. And I just wanted to know how you dealt with criticism, especially at the executive level, of people who don't share the same vision as you or don't share your passion.
Okay, so here's the big answer, right? So when I started in my new chapter 2 life after my husband died, and I was doing all this good, and I was leveraging my diesel brand to do good, and I could maybe justify is the wrong word, right word. I could assuage myself that I was doing that. Then it became not enough for me. And as my friend here knows from U of M, that I sold my business back to Diesel a couple of years ago. And as of last week, I handed in my resignation. And I am no longer, I will, as of December 31st, will no longer be the CEO of Diesel Canada for exactly the reasons that you just mentioned. Because you can only grapple so many times. So, yes.
It's very interesting to know. I feel like that's exclusive information.
It is not actually yes, but can I trust you to keep a secret, Delane? You know what a secret is, eh? It's between me and you.
And everyone
And
else.
everyone else. Look, it's very simple. You have to, like I was just saying before, you got to have a balance, and you got to live with yourself. And if you can do good, but there comes a time when you just want to do more. And when you just want to do more, you have to. I want to be with people that understand what I want, and I want to be with people who want to do good every day. And so if I can't do that, I'm going to do it myself. Do you have another question?
I do have
a follow-up question. Thank you.
Another thing is you stressed that we should be taking risks and that we should be there, and I definitely agree with you. But how do you propose mitigating the risks of putting yourself out there?
Well, I think it doesn't matter where you are in business. It's going to be a risk. You mitigate risk when you educate yourself, when you learn everything you possibly can about what you're going to do or try to do. And when you do that, unlike me, who has really gone where angels fear very often, that I just jump in the deep end. And, you know, recently, I don't know if you all know, but recently I did my MBA here at McGill and HEC combined. And I did that as a kind of an exercise of fun for myself. But I did learn a lot. And one of the things I learned was this concept of preparation. Preparation. Really preparing yourself. You could have the greatest idea, and it could have 10 different points. Now you go and you educate yourself, and all of a sudden you have 5 points that don't apply, and they're replaced by 5 other points. So mitigating is when information is power. And you have, unlike us, you have every single tidbit of information known to man is at your fingertips. You are way ahead of where we were. You just have to go and you have to educate yourself. And you will mitigate the damages quite well. And then you go and you see other people that are doing something. If you're doing something completely revolutionary, you can still help yourself by learning. Just education. Education is everywhere. What you guys doing here at McGill, you should be proud of yourselves. There is nothing more important on this earth today than education. And that's what we have to do in this world. We have to educate our children. When we will educate our children around the world, we will not have terrorism, we won't have poverty, we won't have strife, we won't have any of the things that we're stuck on watching on the news every night. Because education is power.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think this lady was, and then before the gentleman. Go ahead.
Sorry. Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Arushi.
Nice to
thank
meet
you.
you. Oh, happy.
Diwali, yeah.
Yes,
Thank you
happy
very much.
Diwali.
I appreciate it.
It's the Festival of Lights.
It is. First of all, thank you very much for your time. My question is, given the controversy that surrounds big bureaucratic organizations, what do you believe the role of international institutions like the UN, the IMF, the World Bank have had in world development in the past and in the present? And going forward, is that a productive way of making real change?
This is an excellent question. Okay. I work with the IDB, the Inter-American Development Bank. They're the clearinghouse for all Latin American countries' aid dollars. So, and by the way, they're owned 5% by the Canadian government and some by the U.S. So, if Argentina wants to give $100 million of aid money, it normally goes through the IDB. When I was in Haiti after the floods, I got a chance to sit with the head of the World Bank for Haiti, his region. And so we had just had the floods, and we'd been there, and the floods had hard hit Gonaïves, big time. Gonaïves was a disaster in Haiti. And so there was 12, different players at the table. I was the only non-Haitian, actually, at the table. We went around the table, and everybody was asking what the Clinton Foundation was asking everyone what they were going to be doing in Haiti now that after this is before earthquake, this is pre-earthquake time. So that's the first one. I said, what are you doing? We're building a school in Gonaïves. What are you doing? We're building a school in Gonaïves. What are you doing? We're building a school in Gonaïves. What are you doing? We're building a school in Gonaïves. Out of 12 players at the table, 10 were building a school in Gonaïves. When they got to me, the entrepreneur, what do you think I said? You can't answer because you know. I said, do any of you bleeping talk to each other? So what's the real role of big organization, in my opinion? Two things. One, disseminating emergency aid in the speed of light in huge disasters. And even then, they don't do it so good. Small entrepreneurial places are doing it better. And two, coordination and big infrastructure. So when I asked the guy from the World Bank, what do you do with, how do you give the money to Haiti? He says, we have a formula. I said, what's your formula? We give X percentage for education, X percentage for roads, X percentage for this, X percentage for that. And I said, you have the same cookie cutter model for every country? He says, yes. I said, Haiti's got underwater with 8 bridges, needs infrastructure. Why wouldn't you take school money, because all these guys are building them, and put it into fixing the bridges? That's not our model. What's the problem with that? It's easy to criticize. But at the same time, I've worked with UNICEF, and UNICEF did a great job with the bed nets. The bed nets saved millions of lives. There's no way in the world we would have done that if it were not for UNICEF with the distribution network. I grapple with the UN. Personally, I think the whole political arm of it should get blown up and then just leave the aid, because aid they do well, UNICEF and all that. Why are you laughing? Oh, you think so too? Good, I'm glad. It has a problem in the political, but from a real, its budget, it only spends like 10% in development. Did you know that? 10% of all that money, it's considered to be somewhere in the 20, I don't know how many tens of billions of dollars. This much goes into what we all want to do. So what's the problem? It's nobody's fault. The problem is that to change these organizations is very tough. So why do I bring the IDB? Because the IDB decided it wanted to be entrepreneurial. It wanted to support people like me. It wanted to create. It's very hard because the level of paperwork, the level of control they have to have, they don't want to bet on an entrepreneur like me. I don't fit in that mold. So again, change will come when more and more of you are there with more and more ideas, giving more and more people work, and then the banks will start to look and say, okay, we have to change. We have to take some of our budget and we have to create entrepreneurial. Institutions, governments, they don't change overnight. We have to change it from the bottom up. We're never going to change it from the top down. So more of you are out there. Do you agree with me, Professor? Ah, Professor agrees with me. Yes. No, but I'm saying from the ground up, the swells will come. You know, President Clinton said something in London. We were at an event, and he said the following thing. He said, I can do his accent, by the way, but I won't do it. But he said, you know, money's in less and less hands every day. It's a power. Less and less hands, less and less people have access to money. He says, but you know what? Power is being disseminated across tens of millions of people. And power will trump money. What does that mean? It means exactly that. It means that every time you guys look and you see Bill Gates has another 10 billion and this and what, it doesn't matter. Because you have 1 billion times more power than Bill Gates. Because you have the cell phone. And you have social media. And you can move mountains. You can make things change with technology. You are the generation of technology. So it doesn't matter what happens with IMF. They're not in the game yet. They're still living 20 years, as most of our big institutions are. They're still stuck in the 80s and the 70s. But you know what? You'll make the change happen when you're on the ground with your cell phones and you're creating waves of change. That's your job. Go out and do it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Gentlemen.
So you said that you realized that the problems of the race to the bottom, you realized a very long time ago that the race to the bottom was leading to a degradation of the condition of workers in states that produce these clothing. After around 10 years, I'd say, of you working in this, would you say that you have a good estimate of the amount of clothing produced by Diesel Canada in factories that uphold later standards? And do you have an estimate of the percentage of Diesel Canada's profits or revenue that is associated to increasing the amount of factories that uphold labor standards and in general increase the well-being of the workers that work there?
Well, first of all, Diesel Canada is not doing it. I'm doing it. So it has nothing to do with Diesel Canada. I do not have the numbers of Diesel Canada because they're a worldwide organization and all production is done out of Italy. So I do not control. Even when I was my company and before I sold it back to them, I didn't control the production. So I did not have any say in where the production was done as a distributor. Diesel's a $1.2 billion company. You're all management students, do the numbers. It's a lot of product. And, you know, Ralph Lauren's a $7.2 billion company. And Giorgio Armani's a $4 billion company. Remember that the FOB value of production in the world is $650 billion. Every year, $650 billion in US dollars leaves every collective factory in the developing world. And that's why I said you put 5% back, you change the world in 24 hours. That's $30 billion in 100 million people's hands, which is a lot of money in the developing world. So I can't answer you. I'm sorry. If I could, I would. One thing about me, I'm transparent, but I don't have the answer. The answer is what was for me. What is coming. Do you have another question?
So just to make it clear, as the main distributor of diesel clothing in Canada, you have no idea where they're made?
I know which countries they're made. I don't know which factories they're made in. And I have no control over the placement of that production, no.
And you made no inquiries at any point to figure out where they were being made?
Yes, we made inquiries on many an occasion in order to set aside some compliance issues. But I just want you to know that the factory that burned down in Bangladesh was compliant. So, you know, it's like if you ever, and I'm not here to criticize anyone, and that's why I don't want to change things with a negative approach. I want to change things with a positive approach. They know, for example, that when 60 Minutes was in the Apple factory, they literally did a 2-week preparation for 60 Minutes, and when 60 Minutes left, everything went back to what it was. So this compliance issue, like Walmart has, I mean, it's all full of BS, if you want my honest opinion. I know a fund in New York that's starting. It's a $1 billion fund. Its sole responsibility is going to be to go into factories and upgrade it in terms of technology and stuff like that. And so we're working on it. We're trying. We're shit. Everything we've done up until now has been shit. We've abused, we've taken advantage of people, we've putrefied the environment, we've thrown dyes into the ground. We've done all that. My question to you is, what are you going to do about it? Right? When are you going to? Right now in the factory in Haiti, we have threads for thought. They are 100% sustainable. That's why they're in our factory. And I'm saying to all of you, when are you going to start to demand from us to do the right thing? Because once you demand from us to do the right thing, we're going to be forced to do the right thing. The change comes from the bottom now. It does not come from the top. So you're right to be pissed at me. I'm pissed at me. And I make no excuses. I just try to do my best to change things. But I can't do it alone. So when all of you get together and start to demand from where you buy, I did the same thing to women. In Canada, only 16% of board seats are occupied by women. Why are women buying from these companies? You have the ultimate power, social media and purchasing. Make your changes with your wallets. Demand to know what you buy is sustainable, has integrity, treats human beings with dignity. And I'm glad you asked that question, because now you got me pissed off. But thank you very much for asking it, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
Good evening. I'm Manon, and
I'm sorry, what is your name?
Manon.
Manon, bonjour Manon.
Bonjour.
Tu veux parler en français?
Yeah, but I'm going to try to do it in English so that everyone can understand.
I wanted to practice my French.
Well, I can do it in French, and you can answer in English.
No problem.
Donc, je viens de l'école.
I'm sorry, what are you saying? No, I'm just kidding. I'm sorry Manon. Non, vas-y, je te taquine.
Moi, je suis en management à McGill et on a un cours qui s'appelle Social Context of Business, dans lequel on étudie justement tout cet aspect de l'éthique et de la durabilité, de faire les choses bien quand on fait du business. Et notre professeur, Louis Chauvin, est un peu désespéré parce qu'il voit qu'avec les années qui passent, malgré qu'ils se rendent compte que les élèves sont conscients de ce qu'ils racontent et qu'il faut changer, ils ne voient pas de changement. Et en fait, on a étudié dernièrement que c'était peut-être nos propres écoles de business qui nous poussent à être des requins et à ne pas s'intéresser à l'intégrité des peuples avec lesquels on travaille. Et du coup, je voulais vous poser cette question, vous qui avez vous aussi fait des études de business, que vous en pensez?
Premièrement, c'est une question très pertinente et définitivement on sait que dans les écoles de management aujourd'hui, dans la plupart, rien n'a changé. You know, 2008 happened because people were so greedy. They knew exactly what they were doing. And the government actually stood by and watched it because the percentages, I got to tell this story because I think it's pertinent to what you're saying. So, in the United States, the dream of every American is to own a home. That is the ultimate American dream. So if you live in the United States, if you own your own home, it's almost like you have achieved nirvana. The default rate on mortgages in the United States, pre-2008, was under 6%. Everything about the algorithms and the calculations of the subprime mortgage were all based around that 6%. Every single person knew that they could put as much money out on the marketplace as they could, and that there would only be 6% failure rate. And how did they know that? Because even still today, there are people with homes on one block that are underwater, that they will never see their equity for 35 years. They could walk away from their mortgage, and in the US, if you walk away from your mortgage, your personal credit rating is not affected. They could walk out of the house, go to the house next door, which is identical to their house, and rent it for a quarter of the price of what their mortgage is, and they don't do it. And when Pat Paulson stood up in 2008 and told the American people it's your responsibility to pay your mortgages. He didn't talk to Wall Street. He didn't talk. Where does that come from? It comes from the Harvard School of Business. It comes from the Columbia School of Business. It comes from the Stanford School of Business. It comes from every single business school that says the measurement for success is how much money you can make. And the more money you make, the more money you'll make. And the more value you give to your stakeholders, the more successful you will be. What's the problem with that? It's terrible. But then again, if you own stock, you want that stock to go up. So you, again, have the power to change. Every single one of us, by investing in companies that have a different philosophy. And as far as management schools, you're very lucky to be working to study in Montreal. McGill and U of M are two of the finest. They have a completely different philosophy on how they teach management. They teach it from a point of humanity, of self-reflection, and I think you're lucky. And hopefully one day soon, the Harvards and the rest of the schools of this world will change. But it starts here. It starts with what we do. We have to start taking more responsibility. We can't keep, you know what I mean? But yes, it's terrible. It's terrible. But again, it's in here. What are we going to do to change? Who are we going to buy from? Which stocks are we going to buy? Which companies are we going to support? Which brands are we going to buy?
Merci beaucoup.
Merci à toi, Manon. Mademoiselle?
Hi, my name is Nicole, and I'm an IDS student. And my question kind of goes because I've been a volunteer in the Dominican Republic for the past 2
that's
years.
nice. Congratulations.
Thank you. But we work a lot more in the health section in like health education and with empowering youth over there. And like I'm not going to graduate with a business degree, and right now we're not creating jobs. So how do we go in a developing country and just help them without necessarily creating a job? Because I don't have that degree.
So what's interesting is that there are organizations on the ground that are purely philanthropic that have an entrepreneurial mindset. They're the most successful. The one I always bring up is Partners in Health. Partners in Health, which I'm sure you know about if you're in the health, it's the largest non-governmental NGO in the medical community in the world. It's got 98 installations, and it operates in 14 countries, $100 million budget out of Harvard, and it's run by the greatest human being on the planet, Paul Farmer. When Paul Farmer first went, he opened his first outpost in Haiti in 1984. And what he noticed was he could bring health care, but it didn't help because the same people kept coming back because they had malnutrition. So he had to deal with the malnutrition. Then he had to deal with the communicable diseases. He's the man that invented the home health care worker. The home health care worker, which is our version of the CLSC, was invented in the developing world by Paul Farmer in 1984. Because he said, what if I take all the people around the community and give them jobs to go help the people that need help, whether it be to dispense medication for HIV or that have to be taken on a regular basis. So what am I saying is, even if you are going to do pure philanthropy, use your imagination on how you can take a model that exists and maybe apply things that is not in his model. So like Paul built, organic farms around the hospitals so he could feed the patients better. He just kept adding. He believed in education, so he started schools. So what started out as let me take care of people medically became an infrastructure and a community-based. Because ultimately what you want is to consider community as your focal point. Community is the key. What do you do in one community to make it as whole as possible and then duplicate that? So I think being an entrepreneur is not having a business degree, actually. Usually being an entrepreneur is not having a business degree. Being an entrepreneur is just someone who looks at things and sees solutions to problems that are never necessarily have been tried. So you can be real entrepreneurial without a business degree. You know why? Because you care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Can you hear me?
Sure.
My name is Leah.
My question is actually very similar to what you asked. I noticed a lot of your examples about friends building restaurants or yourself, a factory. Like, it requires economical and social power. So what I wanted to ask is, given the fact that all of us are going to graduate soon and we don't have this power economically or socially, where do we start? Like, how do we start getting into the development field?
Well, I think that's a very important question, but it's like I didn't start with the factory. I started by traveling to these countries and learning and educating myself and volunteering and doing other things like that. And then I learned from that. Now, I'm a business person and I've been blessed with a modicum of success, so I reinvested my successes into the developing world. There's plenty of small enterprises and microfinancing enterprises that can be started for very, very little money. And once you're there, you'll see it. It's all there for you to see. So nobody has to start by saying, oh, I got to open a factory for $5 million. No, there's so many opportunities. Like, I mean, every time I go there, I see 500 different things that we have that they don't have yet. And those are all business models that can be expanded, and they don't take much. And there's plenty of people on the ground who are very willing to support good ideas and good initiatives.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions? No? Thank you very, very much, everybody. I really appreciate it.